The bank lobby was too bright for what was about to happen. It was mid-afternoon, sunlight cutting through tall glass windows and splashing across polished marble floors. Everything gleamed: counters, brass railings, framed certificates on the walls. It was the kind of place designed to make you feel small but safe at the same time. Structured, controlled, regulated. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore stepped up to the counter with slow, careful movements. Her pale blue coat was buttoned all the way to her chin. Her handbag, worn but clean, hung from her forearm. She had that quiet dignity about her, the sort you only see in people who have survived loss but refuse to let it harden them. She slid a check across the counter. The teller glanced at it casually at first. Then her expression shifted. Her name tag read, Alyssa. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She typed something. Waited. The computer screen reflected faintly in her glasses. Then her posture straightened. Ma'am, Alyssa said, voice tightening just a little. This check has been flagged. Eleanor blinked. Flagged? Yes. It's showing irregular activity in the system. The words were clinical. Cold. Detached. I don't understand. Eleanor replied gently. That's from my insurance company. They mailed it last week. Alyssa pressed her lips together. There was a slight tremor in her voice now. Not fear, but authority she wasn't used to exercising. I'm going to need you to step aside. The air changed. People in line shifted. A man coughed. A woman stopped scrolling on her phone. Step aside. Eleanor repeated softly. There's reason to believe this check may be fraudulent. Fraudulent. It echoed. Didn't matter that it was spoken in a calm tone. The accusation hung there like a spotlight snapping on in a dark room. Eleanor's fingers tightened around her handbag strap. I've never committed fraud, she said quietly. But the system had already spoken. And inside institutions like this, the system carried more weight than a lifetime of character. Two security guards approached, not aggressively, just close enough to signal that something official was happening. Close enough to humiliate. Eleanor's cheeks flushed. She could feel eyes on her. 32 years she had banked here. 32 years of deposits, withdrawals, holiday cards sent to staff, polite conversations about grandchildren and weather. And now she was being treated like a criminal. At the far end of the lobby, a tall woman in a charcoal coat lowered her sunglasses. Ronda Rousey had stopped in quietly that afternoon. No entourage, no headlines, just paperwork related to a local youth athletics grant she was funding. She hadn't planned to intervene in anything, but she knew tension when she felt it. It was the same electric shift in the air before a fight, that subtle tightening of space, that invisible thread pulling everyone's attention toward one point. And right now, that point was an elderly widow surrounded by security guards. Ronda walked over. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Is there a problem? She asked. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried. Alyssa looked up, startled. Recognition flickered across her face. Oh, we're handling a fraud situation. Ronda glanced at Eleanor. What's your name? Eleanor, she whispered. Okay, Eleanor. Did you receive this check directly from your insurance company? Yes. For roof repairs after the storm. Ronda nodded once. Then she turned back to Alyssa. Have you verified with the issuing company? The system flagged it, Alyssa replied. That wasn't my question. The words weren't sharp. They were precise. A manager hurried over from a glass office at the back. Mr. Carlyle. Perfect tie. Confident stride. The kind of man who believed policy was protection from all criticism. What seems to be the issue, he asked. Ronda met his eyes calmly. She's being accused of fraud based on an automated flag. I'm asking what verification steps have been taken. Carlyle folded his hands. We follow strict compliance protocols. If a check is flagged, we must escalate. Escalate the transaction, Ronda replied. Not publicly escalate the customer. A small silence. Carlyle glanced at the security guards, then at Eleanor. It's standard procedure when fraud is suspected. Suspected, Ronda repeated. Based on what? An algorithm. There it was, the uncomfortable truth. Carlyle's jaw tightened. We cannot take chances. No one is asking you to, Ronda said evenly. I'm asking for your compliance documentation that authorizes public accusation before issuer verification. The word compliance landed differently. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was procedural, and that made it dangerous. Carlyle hesitated. That's internal policy. Then call your compliance officer. The lobby went completely still. Rhonda wasn't raising her voice. She wasn't posturing. She wasn't threatening. She was asking for process. And process, when examined closely, reveals cracks. Eleanor stood very quietly beside her. Not because she was weak, but because she had lived long enough to know when speaking would only make things worse. Rhonda turned gently toward her. How long have you banked here? 32 years. Rhonda let that number sit in the space between them. 32 years of trust. 32 years of relationship. And one automated flag had overridden all of it. Carlisle finally signaled to Alyssa to step back. He dialed the compliance department. The conversation over speakerphone was stiff and formal. Was issuer verification attempted? Rhonda asked calmly when the compliance officer finished explaining protocol. There was a pause. No. Is there a mandatory de-escalation guideline for elderly clients flagged by automated systems? Another pause. We recommend sensitivity. Recommend, Rhonda repeated. Is it required? No. That was the shift. Not explosive. Not theatrical. Just a subtle realignment of power. Carlisle's tone changed. We may have acted prematurely. Rhonda held his gaze. Then corrected. Carlisle personally called the insurance company. The verification took less than 5 minutes. The check was legitimate. There had been a minor routing discrepancy in the automated system, a glitch that triggered a fraud protocol without context. Security stepped back fully now. Alyssa's face was pale. Carlisle cleared his throat. Mrs. Whitmore, we apologize for the misunderstanding. Eleanor stood straighter. You accused me of fraud, she said quietly. In front of everyone. Carlisle's polished confidence faltered. Rhonda didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence did the work. Carlisle finally said, we will be reviewing our compliance procedures immediately. Rhonda nodded once. Good. She turned to Eleanor. Would you like me to stay while you finish your transaction? Eleanor looked up at her, eyes glassy but proud. Yes, dear. I would. The deposit was processed without another word. But something had changed in the room. It wasn't about celebrity. It wasn't about intimidation. It was about accountability. As they walked toward the exit together, Eleanor squeezed Rhonda's hand. I didn't think anyone would say anything. Rhonda gave her a small smile. Systems are powerful, she said. But they're not above question. The glass door slid open with a soft mechanical sigh, and the late afternoon sun spilled across the sidewalk like something cinematic on purpose. For a second, the world outside felt brighter than it had any right to be. Cars rolled past. A breeze tugged at Eleanor's coat. Life, stubborn and ordinary, kept moving. But inside Eleanor's chest, something had shifted. She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath since the word fraudulent hit the air. I thought I was going to faint in there, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Rhonda didn't laugh, didn't minimize it. She just nodded. That kind of spotlight can make anyone dizzy, she said. Especially when you didn't ask for it. They walked slowly toward the curb. Eleanor moved carefully, but there was a steadiness in her steps now. Not the shakiness of before, something else. A quiet reclaiming. I've banked there since 1994, Eleanor said, almost to herself. My husband handled most of it. After he passed, I kept going. It felt familiar. Familiar. That word carried weight. Banks weren't just buildings to people like Eleanor. They were markers of stability. Routine. Trust layered over time. Rhonda glanced back at the building. All glass and steel and polished certainty. Familiar doesn't mean infallible, she said gently. Eleanor looked up at her. You weren't afraid. Rhonda smiled again, but this time it had an edge. Not sharp, just seasoned. I've been afraid plenty of times, she said. You just learn to stand still in it. There was a pause. The kind that doesn't feel awkward. The kind that feels earned. Across the street, someone had clearly recognized her by now. A couple of phones hovered in subtle angles. Whispers traveled fast. Eleanor noticed. Oh my, she murmured. They know who you are. Rhonda shrugged lightly. Sometimes that helps, she said. Today it did. They stood there for a moment longer, traffic humming between sentences. Then the bank doors opened again. Mr. Carlisle stepped out. His tie was slightly loosened now. Not enough to look careless. Just enough to suggest discomfort. Ms. Rousey, he called out. Rhonda turned slowly. He approached with careful steps, posture recalibrated. We've initiated a formal review of our automated flagging procedures, he said, and we'll be implementing mandatory de-escalation guidelines for senior clients. Rhonda didn't react immediately. Good, she replied evenly. He shifted his weight. We would also like to issue a written apology to Mrs. Whitmore. Eleanor blinked. Oh, Rhonda glanced at her. Make sure it's addressed to her, she said. Not to valued customer. Carlyle nodded quickly. Of course. And, Rhonda added, voice calm but anchored, train your staff on discretion. A flag is not a verdict. That one landed. Carlyle gave a tight nod. Understood. When he retreated back inside, the glass doors closing behind him felt different. Less imposing. Less absolute. Eleanor let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Well, she said, I suppose I'll be famous at church this Sunday. Rhonda chuckled. You earned it. They began walking down the sidewalk together, unhurried. You know, Eleanor said after a moment, when they said fraud, I started wondering if maybe I'd filled something out wrong. Maybe I'd misunderstood something. Rhonda's expression softened. That's how systems protect themselves, she said. They make you question yourself first. Eleanor was quiet at that. That's not right, she said finally. No, Rhonda agreed. It's not. They reached Eleanor's car, a well-kept sedan that looked older but meticulously cared for. She paused before unlocking it. Why did you step in? She asked. It wasn't admiration. It was curiosity. Rhonda leaned slightly against the car door. Because it was uneven, she said. 3 people with authority standing over 1 person with none. Eleanor smiled faintly. I had some authority. 32 years of deposits. Rhonda grinned. Exactly. There it was, the vibe shifting fully now. Not just recovery. Momentum. A news van rolled slowly past the intersection. Someone inside clearly trying to decide if this was a story. Eleanor noticed it too. Oh dear. Rhonda waved it off. They won't get much. No shouting. No scene. Just paperwork. Eleanor's lips curved upward. That might be the most rebellious thing I've ever done, she said. Rhonda laughed, a real one this time. Requesting compliance, she said. Rockstar behavior. Eleanor opened her car door, but hesitated again. You know, she said thoughtfully, I think I'm going to write a letter. To the bank. Rhonda asked. To the board, Eleanor replied. Rhonda's eyebrows lifted approvingly. There you go. Eleanor nodded, more to herself than anyone else. I won't be unkind, she said, but I will be clear. That was power. Not loud. Not viral. Not chaotic. Clear. Rhonda stepped back as Eleanor settled into the driver's seat. Thank you, Eleanor said again, meeting her eyes. Rhonda shook her head lightly. You stood there, she said. You didn't crumble. I just asked questions. Eleanor considered that. Sometimes, she said softly, that's enough. The car engine turned over smoothly. Eleanor gave a small wave before pulling into traffic, merging steadily, like nothing had shaken her at all. Rhonda remained on the sidewalk for a moment longer. Across the street, the bank stood exactly as it had an hour ago. Same glass. Same marble. Same policies, at least for now. But something invisible had shifted inside it. A teller would think twice before saying fraudulent out loud. A manager would pause before surrounding someone with security. A compliance officer would draft new language that included mandatory discretion instead of recommended sensitivity. All because someone had said, show me the protocol. Rhonda slipped her sunglasses back on. Not because she needed to, but because sometimes you step in, correct the imbalance, and step back out just as quietly. No press conference. No grand speech. Just accountability in broad daylight. And that kind of energy, it lingers. It hums in places long after the doors close. It reminds institutions that systems may be powerful, but dignity is not negotiable.